everybody. Welcome to another episode of Mishmash Men. You're here today with me, Dustin Labar. To my direct and maybe 3 to 4 feet away is Mr. Adam Mauser.
How do you do?
First off, we'd like to thank you, the listener and viewer, that for staying with us. We hope you enjoyed last week. Adam did a great episode on confirmation biases. Cognitive biases. Yep. Which was a fantastic episode. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It was very informative and it tied a lot of things together. That was super fun.
I enjoyed it.
So today we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to call it subliminal marketing and product placement.
Okay. That's interesting.
So I'll just tell you. So subliminal marketing or subliminal messaging is, this is a form of marketing that it's absolutely intentional. The sounds, visuals, messaging is to get a specific point across to those viewing the ad. So they put something in an ad or something that you may not even notice at first glance. In fact, you probably don't notice it at first glance. And then all of a sudden you look into it and if you look up these examples that we'll talk about today, you'll actually notice that you're like, wow, that's clearly intentional.
Yeah.
They did it on purpose and it's to trigger something. The reason I talk about this and also product placement. So we're going to talk about product placement specifically in movies, because I think that people can understand that a lot. Movies, TV, commercials, that kind of stuff.
So product placement is like a subcategory of subliminal messaging.
To me it is, because I think sometimes,
to me too. Yeah.
Sometimes it's very intentional, or like it's less subliminal and people will just say, like it'll be like very clear what they're trying to get across. Right. And other times you're like, I'll just give you an example. Other times you're like, dang, Tony Stark has a really cool car.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then all of a sudden you're like, what car is that? And it's Audi. And you're like, oh, it's an Audi.
Here's how I know that product placement worked. As soon as you said Tony Stark has a really cool car, I immediately remembered Audi.
So it works very well, obviously.
Very well. It's effective.
The reason I was pretty excited when I came up with this topic, if I'm being honest, is when I was growing up. So I was born in 87. So I'm pretty old. But I remember specifically my mom being worried about like subliminal messaging. Like they're trying to trick our kids.
Yeah.
Like it seemed like now I think it's less important, because I think we'll probably get into it. But like, I mean, if I Google search baby clothes for Finley, I know when I open Instagram that I'm going to have baby clothes on my feed. Like right. We almost kind of like accept it now. It's far less subliminal. Now it's just like right in your face. You may wonder, how did they know that? Or how did they do that? But I mean, all that it's kind of like just changed with the times. So like, I remember like, it was like a worry.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I mean, it depends on who you are.
Yeah.
Some people, I've talked to people that are like, I love it. I can just search one thing and then I know when I go into Instagram that there's going to be 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
Other people I know don't love it so much. But people literally are selling your data to be able to do that stuff. But the reason I got excited is because I remember that being a big thing. Like people were, they're worried that there were like in movies, there's subliminal messages, right. and in TV,
records.
Records.
Yeah. Backward masking. I'll tell you about that later.
Okay. Excuse me. So let's talk about, I'm just going to give you some examples and I can pull them up or I can show you on my phone because I have them right here. So subliminal messaging, this is going to be specifically like brands that do it. So are you familiar with the subliminal message that's in the FedEx logo?
I'm not.
Okay.
That's interesting.
So I'm going to zoom this in. So if you guys are listening, or even if you're watching, go ahead and just search the FedEx logo. You'll see in the EX.
Oh, there's an arrow.
There's an arrow pointing that's like, it's obviously very intentional that they've made it do that. But they're saying that, whether it's they're transporting the package or it's done the right way, it's pointing to the right.
Yeah. We're going.
Yeah. So it's super interesting.
Right, left to right.
So that's one for subliminal messaging. What does the Amazon logo look like to you? What do you think that the subliminal message is in the Amazon logo?
There's a couple things going on there.
Okay.
You've got a smile.
Bingo. That's the one. That's the one I'm looking
everything from A to Z.
Oh, I didn't even know that one. That doesn't say that in here. Oh, no, it says it right here. We have everything from A to Z.
Yeah.
That's the smile is the one that I looked at. Some of these are super funny. It's just funny to look at subliminal messaging, especially older ones or product placements, and you're like, my God, I can't believe, because I didn't notice them. Some of these I didn't notice.
Yeah.
So they obviously didn't do a great job. Do you remember the 99-cent KFC snacker? I remember it. I used to be fat. So
that was a great episode, by the way. I love that the stories. Because it's a success. But anyway, I do not remember the KFC snacker.
So I don't even know if you can. It's going to be hard to see it. But KFC, it was 99 cents chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
And they put a dollar bill.
Oh, that's clever.
As a piece of the lettuce to be like it's only 99 cents.
Yeah.
So I guess I should have said this. I think when people think of subliminal messaging, at least the funny ones are like where somebody's watching a movie and a thing blinks and it goes away.
Well,
those
I thought that's where we're going.
That has happened. This is a little bit more different in the way that I'm going with it. So if you have any examples of that, let me know. I didn't look that up specifically. I thought this was a little more applicable. So Wendy's, I didn't know this one. Wendy's changed their logo. And mom is written in her collar.
I did not know. It's
supposed to be family values.
Yeah.
So if you're looking up the new Wendy's logo, you'll see that MOM
No
is
kidding.
written in her collar.
I never noticed that.
Yep.
I worked. That was one of my first like real jobs with tax withholding.
I guess I have to ask you. Do you think these actually work? Like these specific ones that I'm talking about? Because I never noticed that.
Well, but it's subliminal.
Right.
So you don't notice it. It's not like
that's right.
Like once you do notice it, it's okay.
Right,
it's okay. But there are things, the unseen is what concerns me.
That's fair.
And you talked about the flashes.
Right.
So like you could, and I don't know how accurate this is.
Okay.
But I've heard this is true.
Mm-hmm.
So you know.
Yeah.
And if you hearken back to my logical fallacies and my confirmation bias, the reason I'm not sitting down on this firmly and saying yes, and that, therefore I never go to the movies.
Yeah.
But I've heard tales that they take, and it doesn't even have to be a frame long enough where you recognize it. You don't even notice it.
Yeah.
But then the old, where it's just individual pictures of that frame, they would flash up like popcorn or soda or just things to get you hungry and thirsty for what they sell out in the lobby.
I'm all of a sudden I'm hungry for some popcorn.
Yeah, and so you sit there and watch movies. And I associate movies with popcorn.
Right.
And who knows why? Is it because of some phantom subliminal messaging?
Yeah.
Or is it because every time we go to the movies, we would get some popcorn, no matter how exorbitant the cost?
Yes.
So who knows what drives it? But the bottom line is, I've heard it, and I'm kind of curious about it.
I've heard that too, and I can do a follow up where I looked more into that. I went more like logos and product placement, but I can look more into that specifically because I have heard. I kind of made the executive decision. I was like, I'm not going to research the things flipping in videos because I'm not going to. For it to make sense in a podcast, I'd have to bring the video up and we'd have to go through it and see if we can actually see it. For it to make sense,
or just a good study that this is what they've done, and we have documentation of it, and we talk about that.
Interesting that like even if they don't, I'm going to use movie. Actually, me and Mabry just talked about this because Mabry took the kids to see their first movie. I'm not trying to steal Mabry's story. Mabry took his kids to, if you don't listen to Reaching for the Bars, Mabry is another one of the Reaching for the Bars cast. He has two kids. They're younger. He just took them to their first movie. It was the Mario movie.
Yeah.
And the reason they took them is because tickets were $7. And so Mabry's, we're talking, me and him talking on the phone, and he says, yeah, and then Gabby decided that she wanted popcorn and soda. And then all of a sudden, it's $75.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, man, it's really unbelievable because it's almost like you can't. I don't know if you ever have. I've never have. I've never gone to a movie theater and been like, I'm not doing popcorn. Like I'm getting popcorn. If I go to the movies, I'm 100% getting popcorn. And I'm getting a soda. And I do it every time I go. And I know that it's expensive. And I know that you could sneak snacks in. But I'm going to get popcorn.
So there are times when I choose not to, but I have to be resolute. Mm-hmm. In fact, the last movie we saw was Mario. I took several, and I didn't get the popcorn and soda because it doesn't matter.
Right.
but I resolved we're not going to do this. We're just going to go to see the movie.
Right.
And but most of the other time, I'm like, that's part and parcel. I know I'm going to be spinning through the nose. It's kind of like people that go to Vegas and go gambling, and they set this limit. They don't necessarily have a gambling problem,
Right.
But they look at it as entertainment. Like if they were going to go to a show or if they were going to go do something else, I'm going to spend $300 total in gambling.
Yeah.
And when that money ends, I'm done because that's the entertainment. Same thing with popcorn.
It's interesting because I don't think if I go to the theaters because I really want to see this movie, right? So probably days are gone where I would just go for like I don't have anything to do. I'm just going to go to the movies.
Yeah.
So I'm not like actively thinking, oh, let's go see the Avengers, and then also we'll get popcorn. I'm just like, let's go see the Avengers, and then as soon as you walk in there and you smell the
oh, it's good.
You're like, I'm getting.
That might even be fake smells they're pumping in there.
I don't really care.
I don't either. It's so delicious. I love.
And they're like, do you want butter? And I'm like, what do I look like?
It's not even real butter. It's seed oil that we've decried. But I'm like dumping it in there and mixing it up.
How much should I put on it?
Yeah. Give me a cup.
Really a funny aside, when we moved down here, down here and over, we went to the theater at Bridge Street.
Yeah.
And I'm looking up tickets online. And they're like 21 and older section. And I was like, hey, Laura, what's this 21 and older section? And she was like, I don't know. I never heard about it. I was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but surely there's alcohol involved. And so we buy tickets there. And I mean, I get absolutely drunk. I mean, I'm like, let's have a part. So I'm like, I don't want to, like, I'm telling her and she thinks this is a poor idea. But I was like, well, I don't want to get up in the middle of the movie. Let me get 2 of those 24-ounce glasses of beer. That way I don't have to get up.
Yeah.
And of course, if you drink 48 ounces of beer, you're going to pee.
Yes.
So I've got
100%.
I got a crazy buzz. I've peed, and now I'm falling asleep during Jurassic Park.
What a great experience you had at the
over
movies.
there sleeping, and I wake
You
up
could have done that in your house
easily. So now I have
for like $10.
Now when we go there, I either mitigate it or it's with friends, and I don't really care if we watch the whole movie if we're just joking around. But anyway, I digress. So subliminally, Coca-Cola's bottle is supposed to be the shape of like a curvy woman.
Huh.
I don't like they said, I didn't fact check this website. It looks like it could be real. But it's supposed to be like, that's a woman's body. That's like a Coke.
Like a
like
narrow
you've heard
waist.
people say like a Coke bottle or like a bottle. I don't know if necessarily, I don't know if I've ever thought that. Obviously it's subliminal. And I guess that could be a reason.
It could be.
Because they all soda bottles are like that now.
Well, so. it like all of these things just become this tapestry in the background of all decision making.
Right.
And once it goes in there, it's hard to uproot it, just like we talked about last week.
Right. That's fair.
It is hard to uproot it. And so it becomes this fabric that, like, if now, let's say someone comes up with this footage, and I doubt they'd have it because Coke is pretty old.
Yeah.
But let's say they had some footage of the decision makers around the boardroom table.
Mm-hmm.
The marketer guy says, yeah, we're going to do this, and we're going to get those suckers to buy a Coke because they think it's a woman.
Yeah. Do you know what guys like? Women's bodies.
Yes. and then like they're going to succumb to us, and they're going to be, we're going to make them slaves to our Coke.
That's right.
And we're going to take over the world with the Coke. And then even if you see that, you're like, I don't know. I really like the taste of Coke because it's part of the tapestry.
Yeah,
now.
right. How do you feel about when they did New Coke? Do you think that was all
marketing?
That
was awful.
All marketing?
Yeah.
So do you think that was all, because the conspiracy theory is that they were like, here's New Coke, and everybody's like, this is the worst. And they were like, oh, well, what if we brought back old Coke?
I think it was
like, woo.
Because that was I would say the height when Pepsi was really getting up on the step.
Okay.
So you had, Coke was always the leader.
Yeah.
And Pepsi they had some very clever marketing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, I think I was like 15, 16 in that neighborhood. They came out with that new Coke, and it was awful.
I never had one. Was it absolutely
It was
terrible?
awful. And like I always preferred Coke, and then they changed it, and then they're like, oh, we'll switch it back.
Yeah.
Now they did something else because they changed some things. So I think that was intentional to draw attention because all press is good press.
Sure.
Good, bad, or different. It's just it gets attention, and if you get attention, I think it was purely intentional, and they did some other things to the recipe that made it more cost effective for them or achieve larger goals that they might have had.
I mean, if somebody came up, if that's the case, that's genius.
It is.
If
It is
people are like,
genius.
"Old Coke is our new Coke is terrible," and they're like, "All right, we heard you. We're bringing it back," and then, but they maybe have altered something in the old Coke recipe to be more cost effective
Yeah.
or whatever.
Let me throw this in there. I've heard someone talk about this before. There's a lot of folks that poo-poo the idea that, well, marketing, that doesn't really affect me. It doesn't really work. It's ineffective. It's just hogwash.
Right.
Or subliminal marketing. There's no way that works. How do you explain Fifth Avenue? Fifth Avenue, New York is like the capital of, like, that's the marketing street basically for New York. And there are huge corporations that fund a lot of research into marketing. If they didn't think it was worth their penny, they would not put that much money into marketing. It is clearly effective because they put a lot of money into it, and it's very effective because it increases their bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think even if you're driving on like people will be like, billboard marketing is old. Like you don't want to use it, but still, if you drive by it, it does work. 100% it works.
Yeah.
Cause I've driven by things and I'll be like, oh, look at that. I didn't, or you even like real quick and you're like, what did that say? And then you're really thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it gets you thinking. So I think for sure it does work.
Because your mind is idle.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you see this attractive person or this clever statement or an upside down cow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, I think like Chick-fil-A has done it brilliantly. You're like, what is this doing? You're like, man, I could use a Chick-fil-A right now.
I said upside down cow immediately. You're thinking.
I knew it. Yeah. But you're 100% correct. Do you know what the subliminal message is in Tostitos?
No.
Okay. So it's supposed to be like you share chips with friends. So if you look, there's two people sharing chips.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah. So in the Tostitos logo, if you're looking this up at home, it's TOS and then the TIT. The two T's are sharing.
Are people,
and they're sharing a chip, and then OS. It's pretty clever.
That's funny because I hate sharing chips. If I get a bowl of chips, they're
all yours.
Like a hoarder.
They're all yours. You're like, nobody wants these chips, right?
So they need like a version for people like Adam, just like hoarding chips.
Yeah. You should come up with a subliminal messaging for that.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, Tostitos, listen, sharing chips is fine, but having your own chips is
a guy
better.
with a stick, like
yeah, a gun. He's just pointing. I don't know if this one's subliminal specifically. The Burger King came out with the BK Super 7-incher, and it looks like it's a long burger basically.
Oh, I remember when they came out with that. Yeah.
And here is the marketing scheme for it. So if you're listening to it at home, just look up Burger King suggestive campaign. I wouldn't classify this as subliminal messaging.
That's very overt.
That's pretty in your face, right?
It's over. It's to draw attention to a particular demographic.
How many guys were like, I'm getting one of those right now?
Yeah.
I mean, but $6.25. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good price. I could go for a BK 7-incher right now.
I just don't like their cleanliness.
You don't like their cleanliness? I heard that they're taking a gigantic hit right now. Like a huge amount of Burger Kings are closing.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, so if you had to choose between, so where's your go-to fast food? If you had to go. If you have to go.
If I have to go, I'll just go to McDonald's.
Okay.
I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I regret it later. I always refer to it as like, well, I'm going to have, a Big Mac with a side of regret.
Yeah, that's pretty much always the way it goes. I think I had burger. So when we did Sober October, reaching for the bars, the first cheat meal I had is because I was working. I was super busy. I was like, well, the first day off of Sober October, I went to Burger King. And I haven't had it I couldn't even tell you how long it's been since I've had Burger King. Forever. And I was having these old dusty flashbacks of when I used to be fat.
Yeah.
And I would Burger King was my jam. I would choose Burger King over McDonald's any day.
What was it about Burger King you liked?
I liked the taste of their burgers better. And they had this
flame broiled.
And they had this buffalo dipping sauce. That they would be like, I'd be like, can I have a side of buffalo dipping sauce? And they'd be like, how many? I'd be like, load the bag.
You just bought a Coke, Mr. Labar.
Like,
I want the sauce.
Load the bag. They'd be like, is 14 enough? I was like, what are we doing? I said load the bag. And I would just dip burgers in it and fries. And I mean, it couldn't have been good for you. I never looked up the nutritional facts on it, but it was too creamy for it to be healthy.
Yeah. Well, there's no cream in there.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
So
it's zero.
But when I went after Sober October, it was like, I don't know if because my palate's changed a little bit or if they've changed because I don't think they flame grill their burgers anymore. But I got a burger there and I was like, this is the worst. Like, it was so disappointing because I was like, this is going to be so good.
Yeah.
But I will go to Chipotle. I'd like Chipotle. or Chick-fil-A. That's like my go-to.
I like Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
In fact, we've been on the road before. And even though the line is super long,
Yeah.
like I've been bit before, like on these road trips. Hey, we got to get something. The line will be super long, and sometimes I'll forget. Like, oh, we'll just go to McDonald's or Whataburger or whatever.
Yeah.
The line's a lot shorter, or we can just run and run out. And it's always a miserable experience. But you go to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
They're friendly.
That's right.
They are fast. Like, even if the line is like through the roof, you just like, you go through and they're efficient.
Yeah. It's funny to me how many people you could talk to that they're like, man, I went to Chick-fil-A and the line was like crazy long. You're like, oh, did you go somewhere else? They're like, no, of course I got it. I got in the line.
Because they're fast. And
they are pretty fast.
The food is always good.
Yep.
They have a great attitude. And that's what you want. You're not there to eat healthy.
Is there anything more disrespectful than I witnessed the Chipotle in Athens parking lot is full. It's right next door to the Chick-fil-A. None of the cars in the parking lot of Chipotle are for Chipotle.
Oh, they're at
Everybody
Chick-fil-A.
is at and they have signs that are like only Chipotle parking, and these people are like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe on Sunday.
This is America.
Yeah, I'll park wherever I want. But it's good. It tastes good. The chick, and also you're like, this happens to me all the time, and it's so frustrating. I want Chick-fil-A. If Laura says, what do you want to eat? I want to eat Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is so good. She never wants it. And then she'll wake up on Sunday and be like, you want Chick-fil-A? And I'll be like, you're doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, that's right. It's Sunday. They're closed on Sunday. I was
Product
like,
placement.
How dare you? Now I'm like, it's like I have OCD. Now I have to go get Chick-fil-A. So Monday I got to go. But, yeah, I love it. NBC, their logo is the peacock.
Yeah.
And that's subliminal in terms of like it's bright and bold and a peacock and proud. So it's like the peacock in itself with all the colors is supposed to be subliminal. You're like, oh, they're very proud and they're
proud as a peacock.
Let me ask you this, because this is a new twist that's just happened. Do you have HBO as a streaming service?
My girls do, so I'm able to because
So HBO Max now just switched to Max.
I saw that.
So if you had the HBO Max app, you log in on Wednesday and it says, oh, this is no longer active. Go download. Everything still works. You just log in with the same information. You still have access to Max. There has to be something in there. And now when you go, they've separated HBO. It's like, oh, you can watch all these shows, all these different Discovery and HBO. So it's like they've switched it from HBO to Max is now this all-encompassing streaming site. But you get the same thing. Yeah. It's the same thing that you could get before, but now it's just Max. So, are you familiar with Peacock? It's
the
NBC
streaming service?
Streaming service. So, I saw a thing on Instagram. It was like HBO Max now becomes Max, and it says your move, Peacock.
That's funny. That's funny. It's interesting you bring that up because there's a lot of social media, especially on Twitter. It's exhibited most in Twitter. The social media marketers for KFC, Chick-fil-A, Wendy's, all that, Arby's, they're hiring people to do a little bit of the trash talk, and they'll trash talk to others, and it's really funny to watch. Like sometimes they'll just nail something.
I've seen some of that before,
and it's like it's really a savvy and it's not like they're doing something that's rude or crude or anything like that. They're differentiating themselves from the competition. And they're drawing attention to themselves. It's very clever.
Because if you say, because I guess the answer would be like if you saw that, because Wendy's did one that was really funny. They had a guy on Wednesday's social media that was posting funny things, and immediately whatever you like from Wendy's pops into your head. Yeah, you're like, man, Baconator sounds pretty good right now. Yeah, there's how many times I went to Wendy's and I had $12 in my bank account in college, and they're like, how much is a Baconator? And they're like $9. I'm like, phew.
I love Wendy's. Wendy's is where that was my first paying job, like not paper route, not grass cutting. Yeah. And that's where I met Jennifer.
Wendy's?
Yeah, we worked at Wendy's together. We went to different high schools, but we worked at Wendy's. And so I love Wendy's because I know as long as it's a clean place. Yeah. I know their standards are, at least they were. They were good. 35 or 6 years ago. Yeah. They were really good. Like literally, like you have bags of hamburger. Yeah. And they had a big pattying machine, and you would load the bags of like hamburger into this machine and would patty the machine. So it was always fresh, never put in a freezer. And I knew what their standards were. I just love that Wendy's hamburger. It's just, you cannot beat it.
It's
I'm getting hungry for a hamburger now.
Yeah. The Baconator when I was in college, I mean, you couldn't beat it.
Yeah.
It was so good. And if I had enough money to get fries too, watch out. I mean, it was so good. Wendy's Baconator.
Especially when they cooked them in lard, which they don't anymore. But
the fries are pretty good there.
I like their fries. Yeah.
Do you like McDonald's fries the best?
No.
Whose fries do you like the best?
I would say...
Excluding waffle and curly. Because curly fries from Arby's, I don't know if there's a better fry.
I like... we haven't talked about Five Guys. I will walk into Five Guys before I go through a drive-thru at McDonald's.
Five Guys is so
hands
good.
down. But I like their fries.
Yeah, do you get the spicy ones?
No.
The Cajun? Cajun.
We did that the first time I took Jennifer to a Five Guys because I tried Five Guys on a trip, and I was like, hey, they had a Five Guys in Dothan. Hey, let's go to Five Guys.
Yeah.
And she was kind of skeptical, and she wanted to get the Cajun fries. I didn't really care for them.
Yeah.
So I haven't had them since then, but I just like that crispy outside and the potato with salt.
Did I ever tell you my Five Guys story from my CrossFit Five Guys story?
No, this sounds good.
Okay. So for those of you that don't do CrossFit, there's multiple certifications that you can get under CrossFit. There's CrossFit, the main one. You can get your level 1. That's the main one. Then you can get level 2. And then there's all these specialty certifications. So
I didn't know about the special.
CrossFit kettlebell, CrossFit weightlifting. I have a ton of them. I have a ton of specialty certifications. One of them is CrossFit striking. So CrossFit striking, they show you how to use CrossFit and MMA, which I had done MMA.
Right.
So the gym that I was working at, luckily, was big enough. You have to show them that your facility can house the thing. So you show CrossFit, hey, this is how big our facility is. This is all the stuff we have. You come here and do a certification. They pay you part of the proceeds or whatever. So we get CrossFit striking to come to our gym. So my boss says all the coaches have to go take it, which is great. I'm glad to do it. So all the coaches go, and there is this awesome dude, former professional MMA fighter, head of the Boston SWAT team. He's the guy that leads CrossFit striking. Bad dude. Cool dude. He has a couple guys with him. This is CrossFit seminar staff. They are top of the heap. They're the best guys at it. So they split the day up into 2. You do some technical stuff, and then you do a hard workout afterwards, specifically with CrossFit striking. You're going to do a lot of physical stuff after. So day 1, we do all the technical stuff. They're going through everything. And they're like, all right, lunch break. So they're like, where's the closest? Their first thing was like Chipotle. Where's the closest Chipotle?
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, it's over here. We'll show you guys because it's at our gym. So we're like, we go out, and Chipotle's closed for some reason. So they're like, oh, there's a salad shop right here. So everybody, including everybody taking the seminar, all the athletes that are there to take the seminar and the staff go over to this salad place. And the 4 coaches are walking, and we see a Five Guys, and we're like, well, I mean, I don't want a salad, do you? And they're like, no. So
I'm not a rabbit.
So we're like, hey, we're going to go get Five Guys. And they were like, hey, there's a lot of hard workouts to do after this. Don't go in there and be like, feel all crappy. And we're like, we're just going to get just a burger. We're not even going to get any fries. So we get in there, and immediately we're all like, all right, we're getting fries, right? We're all getting fries. So we get an absurd amount of food. We eat it.
Absurd.
We get back.
It's a great word.
So we all get multiple burgers. We get a bag of fries. We come back, and he's like, all right, guys, it's time to get into the high intensity part of this. And when I tell you simultaneously, all 4 of the head coaches, all the ones that were taking the thing, we were like, we have to go to the bathroom. And we spent the bulk of the high intensity part in the bathroom. When we came back down, he was like, you guys really suck. And we're like, I mean, what do you want us to do?
Yeah.
It was delicious. And I mean, we don't really care at this point. But he was so angry that we went there. And it was just like, you're doing all this fitness, and then you're like, but Five Guys, am I right? I mean, we can't pass up we had to walk past it. We're not walking past Five Guys. We're not going to get Five Guys.
Their hamburgers are just too good.
Do you know what the subliminal messaging in Baskin Robbins is?
I have no idea. Is it an ice cream cone?
It's 31.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. So Baskin Robbins obviously has 31 flavors. And there's the B has a 3 and the R has a 1 that's different color, so it's 31 flavors. So that brings me to my next thing. So let's talk about product placement specifically in movies, because I think that ties in. Everybody can understand that. Did you ever see the movie Mac and Me? I think that came out in the 80s.
I didn't watch it.
But you've heard of it?
But I might have heard of it. I don't remember the premise, though.
So they're literally doing a scene in McDonald's. So they do a scene in McDonald's, and obviously McDonald's has paid.
Oh yeah.
To be part of that. So let's move on to another one. Okay, the movie Transformers. What vehicle company do you think that was part?
Volkswagen.
It was
or Chevy.
They did not do General Motors.
Yeah.
So Rumblebee was a Chevy Camaro.
Yeah.
And that was like a big deal. So obviously GM, they worked out some kind of deal. But for me personally, when I think of Transformers, the Chevy Camaro is the car that pops the car that pops into my head. Did you see Zombieland?
No.
Twinkies. So Zombieland.
Oh yeah, Twinkies.
Zombieland is zombies have taken over the earth. It's a comedy. Zombies have taken over the earth, and this kid has basically the movie is based on his game plan of how to survive Zombieland or the apocalypse, whatever. And basically the only the food that lasts is Twinkies.
Right.
So they pretty much they're like, Twinkies are amazing. And the one guy gets they're looking for Twinkies constantly. And what are the pink ones? The pink cones, they're rounded.
Snowballs.
Snowballs.
Yeah.
They get super mad when they find that. They're these are terrible.
Yeah, they are terrible. Have you ever had chocolate covered Twinkies?
No.
I don't know how long they were around, and I don't know if it was remember there was a big scare about Hostess going bankrupt, and we need to have a bailout. No one bailed them out, just like everything else. It comes back better. Someone else buys it, and they resurrect the brand Hostess.
This?
I don't know if it was before or after that bankruptcy and the buyout, but they had Twinkies that were coated in chocolate.
Oh my God.
It was so good. I'm not a huge
delicious.
Twinkie fan, but you cover it in chocolate. It's like money. Oh, it's so good.
Isn't it funny that something that's so bad for you is only made better by adding something that's bad for you on it?
Yeah.
It's like when you're at a carnival and they're like, "Hey, you guys like Oreos?" And you're like, "Yeah, of course." How did deep fried Oreos sound? You're like,
deep fried Oreos.
They're unbelievable.
There was a restaurant here in Providence.
Yeah.
It's been replaced, but that was one of the desserts.
Oh my God.
And it was like the good kind of like the batter that you deep fry things in. We're not gonna bread it. It's gonna be batter.
Yeah, it's like
that's so much better.
It's like that beer battered almost.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it's not
almost like a funnel cake.
Yes, exactly what it is. Yeah.
Oh, so we went there. Jennifer and I went there on a date, and we got the batter fried Oreos, and it was like, oh, this is so good. It was the best dessert I'd had in years and years. We went back again, got it again. COVID happens. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And then restaurants started opening back up, and you had to follow the silly rules about wearing a mask when you walk in, but then sit down and eat food that's really horrible and bad for you.
Yeah.
But that's a separate topic. And we're so excited about getting the batter fried Oreos again.
Yeah.
And they stopped carrying them.
Oh my God. Were you so depressed?
The food was okay.
Yeah.
But the only reason we were coming there was for the batter fried Oreos, and they didn't have them. It was such a disappointment.
Did you not pay your bill? Were you like, I'm not paying for this?
I just threw the table out and I ran out.
Obviously, that's the only
shaking
way.
my fist.
Yeah, that's the only way to respond to that situation.
Clearly.
I'll have your deep fried Oreos. It's like, oh, we don't have those anymore, sir. You're like, this won't stand.
I've had enough. I thought this was America.
Yeah. I didn't realize I was living in communist Russia. Did you ever watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies, the live action ones?
I saw the one that came out in 1990.
Yeah, that's the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
that one, I was single guy then.
These hit home big time for me because when I was growing up, these were my movies.
Yeah, you were probably at that age. Like it was exciting.
I never had a Domino's pizza in my whole life. There wasn't even a Domino's close to us. But I couldn't live until I had Domino's pizza because that's what the Ninja Turtles ate.
Yeah.
I had to have the Domino's pizza. Because these were like I would watch these movies on repeat. So, I mean, pretty much anything that they put on there, I was like, I have to have them. I have to have this. But, I was like, Mom, can we do Domino's? She's like, the closest one is like an hour away. And I was like, okay, well, go get it. What are you talking about?
Better hurry.
Yeah. Well, if you hurry, it may only take you 2 hours and 20 minutes till my pizza gets back here. Back to the Future. Clothing line for Back to the Future.
Nike,
yep. And they actually came out with the shoes. Do you know the ones that suck up on his foot?
Yeah, the auto.
They came out. They didn't do that, but they came out with that brand on the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future. Nike came out with a special edition shoe. I think Nike that was a huge one because
Yeah.
I think Nike. I don't know if Nike blew up specifically because of that movie or like got bigger, but I know when I watched that movie, I could have guessed that immediately. It's like, oh, it's Nike.
Well, Nike was blowing up around that same time because you had Back to the Future,
Right.
Other marketing things, and then Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. That's
Yes.
right. Was that the same time?
Around the same time.
Around the 80s, must
Yeah,
have been.
mid-'80s, because that was 1985, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was right around the same
Yep.
time. They were like this third-rate shoe company.
Right.
You know, you had Adidas, you had Converse. Those are the two
Right.
biggies. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes Nike.
Yep. Yeah, that's interesting. Because I mean, I remember that even as a kid, I'd be like, I want Nikes. Like when I was watching those movies I was like, I want Nikes like that. Because I mean, there was just like a cool thing. Because you were like, you wanted to be Marty McFly.
Yeah.
You were like, he was like, you know, he had like that temper, and he was also going back in time with like a weird old doctor guy.
Yeah.
And in the future, God, I love that movie. It's a good movie. What do you think the product placement is in Top Gun, the original Top Gun?
Was it the bike?
That's a good one. Was it Ducati?
No, it wasn't a
Ducati?
Ducati. I think it
Okay.
was a Kawasaki Ninja, maybe.
Maybe so. The main one that there is the volleyball scene and Ray-Ban sunglasses.
Oh, yeah, Ray-Bans.
So
the aviators.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Which if I said the volleyball scene, you would have guessed it immediately. I'm sure because his sunglasses were like, you were like, I'm gonna be. That's pretty awesome. And you did become a pilot. Is it because of that?
No.
Oh. Nokia in the Matrix.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, that was a good one. This one's do you see any of the new James Bond?
Yes.
So Heineken in
Yeah.
Skyfall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy that these companies are like, if I'll give you this much money if you put my product in there, and they drink them and they don't really say anything about them, but you're like, oh, I like Heineken.
And here again, I harken back to what I said earlier. People think, oh, that's silly. Why would Heineken pay $6 million to have their product in there? That's just so dumb. It's not effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's 100%.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying $6 million.
Because first off, if you think about it in terms of like, who is James Bond? Every guy is like wants to be like James Bond is a secret agent. He beats up everybody.
He gets the
drives
girls.
He gets the girls. He drives car fast, and he's like, I'll have a Heineken. You're like, I actually like Heineken.
Yeah. And it's not overt where you're like, well, I have to do these things unless you're like 8 years old.
You're right.
But as you age, you're just like, you know what? Maybe I will have the Heineken.
Yeah.
And it's not something like methodical thinking, very rigid thinking.
Right.
It's a heuristic where.
Did you ever watch Parks and Rec?
I love that show.
So Ron Swanson loves Lagavulin.
Yeah.
And me and Laura were on our honeymoon, and a glass of how do you say it? Lagavulin?
Lagavulin, I think, but I could be wrong. I'm not a Scotch guy.
There was a bottle of it, and I was like, "Oh, I thought that was fake."
I thought it was fake too.
And Laura was like, "Oh my God!" It was like Lagavulin, $50 a glass, and this is before I drank any whiskey. I was like, "Can I buy a glass of that?" She was like, "You don't even like it." I was like, "But I want to get.
I want to be like Ron Swanson.
I want to be like Ron Swanson.
He's got a cool mustache and
So
he's
that
got a
kinda
great attitude.
That kind of made me think, like, did that happen to me? Did Lagavulin like get in there and we're like, Ron Swanson is the guy we want drinking our whiskey.
Yeah.
And any guy that's Ron Swanson wants to drink that whiskey. 'Cause at that moment, I promise you, I would have paid $50 to take a sip of that and go, ugh.
Yeah.
And then that's all. Because I wanted to be like Ron Swanson. He's like my hero.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's familiar, even if you didn't think that overtly.
Right.
It's like, oh, I remember that. Well, maybe I'll try a glass. It can't be that bad.
Right, exactly. If Ron Swanson drinks it, it's got to be good. Mini Cooper in The Italian Job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty classic one, I think. I didn't even think about this one, but Wilson Sporting Goods from Castaway.
Yeah.
Which I guess is good if you're talking about product placement. But I guess if you went to, if you were looking for a volleyball, you'd be like Wilson.
Well, interestingly, and I might be wrong in this, but I think in the book Castaway, it was a different volleyball.
Oh, really?
But Wilson Athletics came in and said, hey,
that's very interesting.
We will pay you we want to get our product in
That's
there.
very interesting. So it worked.
It worked.
It worked. Did you ever see, the last one I'll end on this one, did you ever see, they make a joke about it. Did you ever see Wayne's World?
Oh, yeah.
So in the first,
I was in my early 20s.
In the first movie, Wayne's World's a big movie in my life.
Yeah.
Wayne's World and Wayne's World 2. In the first movie, when they get their money, they're doing joke product placement.
Yes, that's right.
So like Wayne is talking to Garth, and then all of a sudden he's pulling a Dorito out of the bag, and it's a perfect uncrumpled Dorito bag.
Yeah, and a
he
perfect
pulls
triangle.
A perfect triangle chip. And then he's like, And then he's talking to Garth, and then the movie pans over to Garth, and he's sitting there in full Pepsi attire, and he's like, yes, but it's the choice of the new generation. And, and they're like clearly making a joke about it. But it's one of the big ones that came up. It's like the most egregious product placement.
Right.
Like in that, he's like, oh, Advil, look, tiny, little,
different.
Different. Yeah. I mean, that is the perfect like product placement movie because it's they're doing it in jest, but it's so funny because that's exactly basically how it works. Like if somebody's eating a Dorito out of a bag, it's like this unrealistic, uncrumbled bag.
Yeah.
That's like perfect.
They fish out this perfect chip. How many perfect chips are there?
Yeah, there's
maybe
0.
3.
The only good ones have a disgusting amount of cheese on them, and the other ones I'm basically they're throwaway chips. I don't care about them. The last thing we'll talk about, just I want your opinion on it. You don't have to give me your full opinion if you don't want. But this stuff, I mean, it exists, but like subliminal messaging, like to me, the thing that's happening more so in marketing now is social media marketing in terms of if you go on Instagram after you've searched something, there's products that you just searched, or if your phone microphone picks up something that you're talking about, all of a sudden you have all these things in your feed that you're like, oh, I did say that I wanted one of those.
Yeah.
Probably not awesome that is able to be done because you don't really have a say. I mean, obviously you probably said I agree to some kind of privacy notification that gives that or letter that says they have the access to do that. But some people love it. They're like, I talked about it and now I have it. Now I just have to. It's
makes the
click.
search easier.
Yes, correct. You're basically not even searching. They're just giving you what you wanted.
Yeah.
Like if I'm like, I need new sunglasses.
I want to take a vacation to Japan.
Yeah. Now they're like, try this vacation.
Right.
What do you think about that?
It's everything, it's a calculated risk.
Right.
And so I'm not excited about it, but I'm not completely, because the tools that you get with these phones are so capable. And when it comes to communication or just access to information or planning or, you name it, the phone does it all. It's frightening.
Yeah. It
is absolutely frightening how much information they have.
Right.
And when I say they, is anybody but me.
Right.
And I think, in the coming years, we're going to be shocked at what was gleaned from our phones.
Right.
And disgusted
by
what was being done with that information. I think eventually it's going to, people are going to be wise to it and then just realize, oh my gosh, what were we thinking? And hopefully it will taper off to where we're not so reliant on these little devices that are really handy. They're like this novelty that we just can't put down.
You almost have to take the good with the bad. It would have to be a huge negative for people for people to be like, I'm no longer using a smartphone.
Yeah.
Because the good in general for people it outweighs, or they're so addicted to it or whatever, outweighs whatever they're doing. And some people, like I said, truly like it.
It's a drug.
I've talked to people. Yeah, you're 100% correct.
It's just it's an addiction.
I noticed it the other day. If you're not doing something, you pull your phone out. Yeah. It's like an easy thing to do. It'd be like, oh, I gotta.
Which is too bad because my kids will complain about this. Like, oh, can we watch this? Can we do this on a car trip? I'm like, just sit back and just enjoy the scenery. Be bored.
Yeah,
because there is thinking that can occur.
Yeah.
And that kind of novel thought, it's a lost art because we are overstimulated right now, including me.
Can I tell you something that's been, and you've probably seen this, and we can end on this, but having a new baby in the house and seeing how stimulating a video can be.
Oh, so it's scary.
Laura will not let her look at a TV.
That's probably good.
So she won't even let her glance at it. But if we're talking or we're watching TV and we're holding her a certain way, and she will immediately like track. It's like, boom, she sees it. And then she's like locked in because it's very visually stimulating. And when you sit there and think about it, you're like, man, that's how they get me. That's how they get me.
Yeah.
But Laura, Laura's very good about like being, which is the right thing to do. She needs to, and we were talking about the other day, I was like, she needs to figure it out on her own. She needs to be bored, and she needs to figure out how to do things herself and how to do all this stuff. But it's so simple to be like, here.
It's like a sugar or something addictive where it's so good, and a shortcut occurs with the visually stimulated.
Right.
You probably heard the idiom, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
Not necessarily. I don't necessarily agree with that because you can. There's a writer, P.G. Wodehouse, and I encourage you to look him up.
Sure.
P.G. Wodehouse, spelled just like it sounds. And the way he writes, he would have these ultra descriptive things that I wish I had one on hand. But it conveys more information than any kind of image could.
Right.
Because you take that and you make a mental picture out of that impression that he made, and he analogizes a description to where it's something that is incongruent normally, but the way he ties it together, it just gives you much more information than just seeing a video or a picture.
Yeah.
And so we're missing that when we look at
Right.
at images. We miss that kind of connection and that kind of thought that,
Right.
that can occur.
You're right. And they do a good job of keeping us tied in.
Oh, they do.
Yeah,
They
they
suck
do.
us in.
Cool. Adam, I hope you enjoyed that.
That was absolutely
It was kind of a
fantastic.
blast from the past, some of it. And
We'll have to do that again and talk about that, the
I'm gonna
flashing
do it
images
again,
that you don't see.
I'll do it again, but hopefully we have the technology that we can show stuff if you can see it, because that might be fun for the video. We just have to work that
For
out.
the viewer.
We'll talk to our social media marketing manager.
Maybe so.
And maybe she can help us out.
Maybe.
So I'd like to thank you, the viewer,
Yeah.
and you, the listener, for hanging out with us today. And hopefully you are going to search some of that stuff we talked about because you didn't know it. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. It was great.
So we appreciate you. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.